The Commonwealth versus Bill Cosby, the one-year anniversary of Bill Cosby's conviction. Whether you believe Bill Cosby is innocent, guilty, or in between, one must question why. Why the imbalance? Why did we only get one side of the story? In my special, I'll present to you a more fuller picture of the relationship between Bill Cosby and Andrea Constand. I'll also present to you the media and how they set this all into motion. And lastly, I'll present to you the Commonwealth and why on earth would they be pushed into trying a case that was riddled with so many inconsistencies, half-truths, and lies, and a jury that actually convicted America's dead. Actor, comedian, activist, philanthropist, educator, musician, Dr. William H. Cosby Jr. was convicted on 3 counts of aggravated indecent assault. He would later be sentenced to prison and would have to serve 3 to 10 years. In January of 2004, then 30-year-old Temple University employee Andrea Constand accused the comedian of sexually assaulting her and drugging her in his Philadelphia, Pennsylvania home. 1 year later, in March of 2005, Andrea Constand sued Bill Cosby. They eventually settled, where the settlement was kept under wraps for years, until the second trial. It was revealed that Andrea Constand received $3.38 million from Bill Cosby. To this very day, Bill Cosby maintains his innocence and proclaims that any intimate moments spent with Andrea Constand were completely consensual. The pound cake speech was given by Bill Cosby in May of 2004 during an NAACP awards ceremony in Washington, D.C. to commemorate the 50th anniversary of the Brown v. Board of Education Supreme Court decision. In the speech, which was subsequently widely disseminated and analyzed, Cosby was highly critical of the black community in the United States. He criticized the use of African American vernacular English, the prevalence of single-parent families, perceived emphasis on frivolous and conspicuous consumption at the expense of necessities, lack of responsibility, and other behaviors. While many applauded Bill Cosby at the NAACP event, others were not too thrilled. For example, author and professor of Africana Studies at the University of Pennsylvania, Michael Eric Dyson, had this to say to Paula Zahn back in May of 2005. Since I was one of the few blacks to publicly disagree with Cosby, I ended up in numerous media outlets arguing in snippets, sound bites, or reposts to contrary points of view. In the New York Times, a few days after his remarks, I offered that Cosby's comments betray classist, elitist viewpoints rooted in generational warfare, that he was ill-informed on the critical and complex issues that shape people's lives, and that his words only reinforce suspicions about black humanity. Three years later, in 2007, Bill Cosby and Dr. Alvin Poussaint appeared on The Oprah Winfrey Show to promote their book, Come On People. During this interview, Bill Cosby explains why he made the infamous pound cake speech.
There's a couple of things I want clarity on. It's not every African American. We're talking about some.
Yeah.
And the sum happens to be the numbers that are very, very hurtful.
Yeah.
Because the sum happens to come from those homes where the parenting doesn't build confidence in a child, where the parents may be on drugs.
Yeah.
They may have all kinds of problems.
Right. Okay, let me say, Bill Cosby's written a new book with longtime friend, civil rights veteran, and renowned Harvard psychiatry professor, Dr. Alvin Poussant, and it is called Come On, People.
Come on, people.
Come on, people.
And I just want all of you to understand, Brown versus the Board of Education. That speech, whatever it is, what's missing is when I say it's not what they're doing to us, it's what we're not doing. That comes from a prize fight. I saw a prize fight, and the fighter was winning the first 5 rounds. He then changed his style, and he got hit. Whoop, and he's going around like this, and he survives. He sits down, his manager says, go back to the way you were doing it. And the guy goes back, and he fights the wrong way again. Whoop, and he says, now the next 3 rounds. Okay, now he sits down, and I'm watching, and the manager said, look, David, it's not what he's doing to you. It's what you're not doing. And to me, that was the clarity of you're not parenting. You're not getting with your child, your children, whomever it is, and saying to them, there's more to this. Who is that you're playing with? Why don't you have homework?
Yeah.
Let me see these things. I've got to go visit the teacher. And I never said there's no such thing as systemic or institutional racism.
Yeah, you never said that. Yeah.
I'm saying we got to dig in and fight. The same way that you and I were protected by our grandparents. We need to see the problem the same way and protect our children.
Okay, let me tell you, after the speech that you did, and it was labeled controversial, did you regret having done the speech?
No, no. The only thing I regretted was I thought that I was talking to just my people.
Yeah.
and so...
And there is a certain way we talk when we think there's only
us
in the room.
Yeah.
There's a certain way, yeah.
I said, okay, I'm going to talk to my people. So I guess maybe there's some black people who saw some white people sitting around, and then they decided that I was dragging out dirty laundry.
Did you think you were dragging out dirty laundry?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. And have you ever seen dirty laundry? It's bad.
The pound cake speech became a turning point in Bill Cosby's career. There were some in the African American community who felt he was too out of touch, too elitist. However, there were also some in the African American community who felt he was on point. They felt his frustration and also understood. This was a man who was still grieving the death of his one and only son, Ennis Cosby, who was brutally murdered in 1997. This also became a turning point once the allegations hit. The media made it be known that the black community should not support Bill Cosby because of what he said in a speech in 2004. " 2014 started off relatively quiet for Bill Cosby. However, he did make an appearance on the rebooted late-night TV show, The Arsenio Hall Show. While on there, he spoke about his usual family values, comedy, education, and business. He even did a little stand-up for the live studio audience. In addition to touring, Bill Cosby spoke about 2 projects he was working on that same year. The first was a Netflix special called 77. The next would have been a new TV show on NBC in which he was slated to play a grandfather. In an interview I conducted with Bill Cosby's PR spokesman, Andrew Wyatt, he explains how the allegations were like an assassin's bullet to Bill Cosby's life and career.
I did all his college tours and stuff, and everything was rolling, and we were having so many great, creating so many great stories and helping so many people. And of course, it was 2014. December. It was probably spring of 2014, and I was getting a call. He was calling me. He said, "There's some stories I'm hearing out here. I need to know if they're catching fire." And he said, there's a story out someone wrote in Newsweek about Bill Cosby being a rapist and R. Kelly and Woody Allen. And he said, "What do you think?" I said, "Look, they're not going anywhere. Nothing's going to happen." And the stories didn't catch on. But then we got into the fall of 2014, and that's when
all hell broke loose.
All hell broke loose. It just, everything came out of nowhere. We were in D.C. Him and Mrs. Cosby had put their art collection on loan to the African Americans Museum of the Smithsonian. And they had given this museum $10 million. And no one has ever seen their collection, because the only way you get to see their art collection, you had to be invited to the homes. And so they decided to put this on. And I set Mr. Cosby up with interviews. David Brokaw, who had been with him for 40 years, his publicist, I set him up for Roland Martin and the late Gwen Ifill. And after he did those interviews, him and Mrs. Cosby, I left. There's no formula for this one. He's caught on camera asking AP to discard the footage, of asking the question. And you can tell it was pre-planned. It was well organized. I will always feel that they knew, since his collection was being, put on in the museum, it was a perfect platform to use that to bring out, a scandal. And they had it planned. It was planned out. It was very well scripted. And him and Mrs. Cosby they were just shocked. And we kept saying, so, okay, the holidays are coming up. It's going to go away, because normally when the holidays come around, things go away. It never stopped. And I remember watching an interview on CNN with Bob Huber, Philly Magazine. He made a statement, and he said, "To all my journalist friends out here, do not let Bill Cosby get out the news. Do not let Ferguson take him out the news. Do not let the holidays take him out the news," because Ferguson was going on with Mike Brown.
Right.
Whatever you do, keep him in the news. And then we knew it was a witch hunt. We knew it was a witch hunt to destroy this man and everything him and his wife worked for.
Right. In the fall of 2014, a then unknown comedian by the name of Hannibal Buress, in a Philadelphia comedy show, declared to the audience that Bill Cosby was a rapist. This comment conveniently goes viral on social media.
It's not going to happen, so I'll keep my mouth shut. Hannibal Buress, you did something so ignorant in 2014 by going on a stage in Philadelphia, found out he was paid by Bob Huber, who's a writer for the Philadelphia magazine. They're the ones that filter that information out to the public, because it had no way of going viral. He did the joke in one show, the early show, and it didn't stick. So on the late show, they said, "We need you to do it again at the 9 p.m. show." He did it again, and they filtered it out to the masses through their social media platform, to millions of people. But now look at Hannibal now. You were working, your name was out there, but now you're not working anymore. We don't hear from you. You left New York and moved back to Chicago.
Andrea Constand dreamed of becoming the first Canadian to play in the WNBA, but that didn't happen for Constand. However, she did play basketball in Europe for 18 months. Shortly after playing overseas, she returned to Canada, and Constand began working as a sales associate in a Nike store while still pursuing her dreams of playing in the WNBA. Determined to get back to the United States, Constance's good friend, Sherry Williams, secured a position for her with then head coach of Temple University's women's basketball team, Dawn Staley. Andrea Constand met Bill Cosby when he served on Temple University's Board of Trustees in 2002. In the beginning, Cosby does admit that he was smitten by her. He was attracted to her, but ultimately, he wanted a mentor/friendship with her. Cosby would even invite Andrea over to his house for dinners, various functions, and even his comedy shows. Constand would confide in Cosby about her personal and professional aspirations and her tenure at Temple University. Wanting to see Andrea succeed in her profession, Cosby arranged for Constand to meet with a broadcast executive in the hopes of meeting NBC Sports and Olympics executive Dick Ebersol. However, the executive met with Constand and decided she was not a good fit at the time to be a sports broadcaster for the Olympics. Andrea was uncertain of her position at Temple University. After several complaints of poor job performance, Constand would resign to avoid the stigma of being fired. In March of 2004, Andrea Constand moves back to Canada. She moves in with her parents while she decides what she wants to do with her life and career. During this period, Andrea Constand still tries to keep in contact with the comedian. However, the phone calls become less and less, and Bill Cosby isn't answering them. Cosby feeling as though he's done all he could to help Andrea Constand still needed that connection due to any major career opportunities. According to Bill Cosby's defense team, which was revealed during the second trial. On January 13th, 2005, nearly a year after being unemployed and living with her parents, Constand, 31, had a flashback and told her mother that Bill Cosby drugged and sexually assaulted her when she worked at Temple University. After informing her mother, Constand attempted to contact civil attorneys in Philadelphia and went to police authorities in Canada. On January 22, 2005, Constand files a police report with the Durham Regional Police outside of Toronto, sparking a criminal investigation by Montgomery County detectives in Cheltenham. During her first interview with Canadian police, Constand reported that Cosby assaulted her in March of 2004 and that the incident happened after a group dinner party in Chinatown. Constand eventually hired civil attorneys in Pennsylvania before she filed her criminal complaint against Bill Cosby. Court records indicate why Constand retained a civil attorney before talking to Montgomery County Police. She was concerned about being charged with extortion like Autumn Jackson. Autumn Jackson first came to media attention in 1997 for her extortion attempt against comedian Bill Cosby after his son Ennis Cosby was murdered. Jackson had threatened to go to the tabloids with her claim to be Bill Cosby's illegitimate child unless Cosby paid her $40 million. Cosby denied the claim. Autumn's mother, Shawn Thompson Upshaw, is one of the accusers, alleging she was assaulted by Cosby. Autumn is not Cosby's daughter and was charged and sentenced to prison for extortion. It was said if Autumn had used an attorney to ask for money, it would not be extortion. Later in an interview with Montgomery County police officers, Constand changed her dates and told police that the incident happened between mid-January and mid-February of 2004, after Cosby invited her for dinner at his residence. In 2005, Cosby's attorney, Walter M. Phillips, Jr., called the charges preposterous. In January of 2005, at one of his attorney's Midtown Manhattan law offices, Cosby is interviewed by Cheltenham Police Chief John Norris, who later tells Vanity Fair that Cosby was cooperative and congenial. He came in wearing the typical Cosby sweater. I was asking the question, and I thought Cosby was a gentleman. I didn't think he was evasive. He answered every question I put to him. He said it was a consensual sexual encounter. That summarizes it. When Constand's claims were being investigated, 13 accusers surfaced, and authorities investigated their claims and interviewed as many as 40 witnesses. The then District Attorney, Bruce Castor, delegated the investigation of the other 13 allegations to First Assistant District Attorney Risa Furman, who is now Judge Furman in Montgomery County Court of Common Pleas. When asked about the accusations against William H. Cosby Jr. in February of 2005, former Assistant District Attorney Furman explained, "Generally, an accusation from over 30 years ago is not going to be considered admissible in court or relevant to an investigation." Police reports reveal that Cosby had a romantic and friendship interest in accuser Andrea Constand. The police report also revealed Constand changed dates, details, and withheld information about the alleged incident against Cosby, including information such as dates, surrounding circumstances, gifts, and post-contact after the alleged incident. The police reports also showed Constand had sexual contact and relationships with males prior to Cosby. Throughout the police investigation, it's learned police issued a search warrant for Cosby's home, and no drugs were found. During his interview with police in New York, Cosby was checked for drugs, and the police tested the Benadryl pills he had on him and confirmed them to be Benadryl pills. In the police report, Constand initially left out that she and Cosby had previous sexual contact. After interviewing Cosby, the police re-interviewed Constand, asking her about previous statements. The first encounter with Cosby was dinner served by the fireplace at his home, where Constand was the only guest, and she had a glass of wine and rare expensive cognac with her meal. After dinner, Constand gave Cosby a few gifts. "Did you have any sexual encounter with Cosby that you did not tell us?" Constand replied, "Yes." Former Montgomery County District Attorney Bruce Castor, citing insufficient, credible, and admissible evidence after thoroughly investigating Constand's claims, including interviewing other accusers, the Montgomery County District Attorney's Office declined to bring charges against Cosby. Castor announced he was not prosecuting Cosby on February 17, 2005. The civil suit was filed 3 weeks later on March 8, 2005. Castor said it was his plan to make it easy for Constand to win a civil suit against Cosby, and his exact quote was, "I wanted to make her a millionaire." Castor said without evidence to corroborate Constand's story, criminal justice was not realistic. Castor made that possible by taking away Cosby's Fifth Amendment rights in the non-prosecution agreement with Cosby's attorneys in the event of subsequent civil proceedings. In March of 2005, Constand files a civil lawsuit against Cosby. She includes depositions from 13 other women who say they were sexually assaulted by Cosby over the years and lists them as potential witnesses. The lawsuit against Cosby was settled in 2006, agreeing to forever release her right to initiate a criminal complaint against Cosby in any jurisdiction in exchange for settlement money. Once the allegations gained steam in the fall of 2014, many of Cosby's accusers were given an abundance of media attention, with little to any questioning or authentic investigative research into their backgrounds. Some of the accusations ranged from Cosby randomly groping women to the comedian being accused of beating, drugging, and raping women. As the number of accusers grew, Cosby's image and career took the biggest hit. Networks refused to show any of his previous television shows, and all future projects like his new Netflix special and new NBC show were immediately shelved. On December 3rd, 2014, self-proclaimed feminist attorney Gloria Allred holds a press conference. During this press conference, Allred announces that she is representing 3 of Cosby's accusers. Allred would go on to represent 33 of Bill Cosby's accusers. During this press conference, however, Allred lays out 2 options for Bill Cosby to consider. The first, he could waive the statute of limitations so all the women accusing him of assault could have their day in court. Or, she said, he could set aside $100 million and the money would be handed out to the women by a committee of retired judges.
Alternatively, and this is my second proposal, if Mr. Cosby doesn't want to waive the statute of limitations because he is not willing to subject himself to scrutiny in a court of law, he should agree to place $100 million into a fund, and anyone who claims she was a victim could appear before a panel of retired judges who would serve as arbitrators to determine the merits of each claim and the amount of compensation that would be appropriate if the claim is found to have merit. This alternative would occur in a mediator's or arbitrator's office, not in a court of law. Victims could present their cases, and Bill Cosby could make his arguments in defense to the retired judges. The judges would then decide. It is time for justice and accountability. We challenge Mr. Cosby to end this nightmare for both him and the alleged victims by accepting either of the options which I propose. And we look forward to his response.
A reoccurring theme and number that was being repeated in the media was, but 60 women can't be lying. However, what many people fail to realize is anytime Cosby would defend himself through press releases or via his attorneys, he would be slapped with a defamation lawsuit for simply defending his name and reputation. An example of this tactic is when ex-model Janice Dickinson filed a defamation lawsuit against Bill Cosby and his former attorney, Marty Singer. However, Marty Singer is eventually dropped from the lawsuit, and only Bill Cosby remained. It's estimated that Bill Cosby had at least $37 million in insurance coverage through AIG, including 2 $1 million homeowner policies and a $35 million umbrella policy protecting him from personal injury or property damage claims, according to the Associated Press. 4 years after launching her defamation lawsuit against Bill Cosby, on July 25, 2019, Dickinson settled with AIG for an undisclosed amount of money. She described the settlement as epic. Her attorney, Lisa Bloom, described it as a very large settlement amount. Nearly 3 months prior to Janice Dickinson settling with AIG, AIG also settled with 7 additional accusers. Without Cosby's permission to settle with any of his accusers, Cosby slammed the settlements as egregious and called AIG one of the worst insurance companies in America's history. One of the biggest misconceptions about the Cosby allegations has been the infamous 2005 deposition that Bill Cosby participated in regard to Andrea Constand's civil lawsuit against him. The deposition spanned over 4 days, from September 28th through September 29th of 2005 and continuing to March 28th through March 29th of 2006. Here is a portion of the deposition that gives better insight into the night in question. Question from the attorney. Now I ask that time, can you tell me without regard to any statements that you recall of the night in which you gave the pills to Andrea? Answer, yes, you did. Question, can you tell me? Answer, yes. Question, please do. Answer, Andrea came to the house. I called her. She came in through the kitchen door. She sat down. I sat down. We talked. We talked about Temple University. We talked about her position. And then I went upstairs and I got 3 pills. I brought them down. They are equivalent of 1.5. The reason why I gave them and offered them to Andrea, which she took after examining them, was because she was talking about stress, her neck, maybe even her shoulders. I'm not sure, her neck.
He had 3 blue pills in his hand.
3 blue pills.
3 blue pills, and he put his hand out and I said, what are those? And he said, they'll help you relax. And I said, like, are they natural? Are they like a herbal remedy? He said, no, they're your friends. Just put them down.
They're your friends.
They're your friends. Just put them down.
Swallow.
And he hands me some water. I get some water somehow, and I swallow the 3 pills down.
Why do you do that?
I took them because I trusted that they would maybe just help me feel a little more relaxed.
You trusted him?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did.
I then said, let's go into the living room. We went into the living room, which is the first living room, which is the opposite of the last 2 encounters. I motioned for her to sit. She said she had to go to the bathroom. She went to the bathroom, which is about a 54-step walk, maybe. She came back. I asked her to have a sit down on the sofa. We were still talking, but then we began to neck, and we began to touch, and we began to feel and kiss back. I then opened my top. I lifted up what was sort of like a fishing net. I don't know what the sweater was. Then I lifted her bra up so our skin could touch. We rubbed, we kissed, we stopped. I moved back to the sofa, coming back in a position. She's on top of me. I place my knee between her legs. She's up. We kiss. I hold her. She hugs. I move her to the position of down. She goes with me. Down. I am behind her. I have this arm. Her neck. Question. Indicating your left arm? Answer. Left arm. Her neck is there. In her head. There's a pillow, which is a pillow that goes with the decoration of the sofa. It's not a bedroom pillow. I am behind her. We are what we would be called in a spooning position. My face is right on the back of her head, around her ear. I go inside her pants. She touches me. It's awkward. It's uncomfortable for her. She pulls her hand. I don't know if she got tired or what. She then took her hand and put it on top of my hand to push it in further. I move my fingers. I do not talk. She doesn't talk. But she makes a sound, which I feel was an orgasm, and she was wet. She was wet when I went in. She relaxed her hand after pressing it against her sound. I relax. I pull my hand out after a wait of a while. I don't say anything. I then make a move to get out. She moves back. She now has her arm like so, her left arm out. I sit between her torso and her thighs. I sit there and I ask her to please take a nap. Please take a nap. I refer to moving eyeballs under the lids. This is an old conversation that we have had about the fact that she said she has trouble sleeping, that her eyeballs move under the lids, that they move under the lids. She has trouble sleeping. I asked her to now try to go to sleep. Go to sleep. I go upstairs. I set my alarm clock for a time. I don't know what, but it's going to be dark so she can leave. I wake up an hour before the alarm goes off. I believe and I look, and she is awake. I said in a sort of chastising way, I thought you were going to sleep, really believing that I would have to wake her up. She says no. She sits up, and then we go to the kitchen. I offer her a blueberry muffin on a plate. She takes it. I offer her tea. She agrees. I go into the cappuccino room. I make tea for her, red zinger. She says she likes it. She's had it before. Bring it back, pour tea. She sits, and we talk. Not a lot of talk, but we talked. She is not asking me a darn thing in a negative. She's giving no viewpoint of anything negative having happened to her. And I sat there and I watched her eat the muffin. I don't think she ate all of it. She then wrapped it up, didn't finish all of her tea. By the way, she sat fully in the chair. She got up, I got up with her, opened the door, she went out through the second door to the car, got in the car, and drove away. Question: now you said I went up and got 3 pills. Can you describe these 3 pills for me? Answer: they are the equivalent of 1.5 decongestant Benadryl. What are the 3 pills? Answer: Benadryl. Why do you say they're the equivalent of 1.5? Because they were broken. What color were they? Blue. Are you saying that you broke the Benadryl? Answer: yes. If one reads the 87 pages from the deposition, Cosby's version of events that night appeared to sound like 2 consenting adults. According to Cosby, even after giving constant Benadryl pills, it had no effect on her, and she never fell asleep that night. One of the biggest misconceptions, or should I say lie, is that Cosby admitted to drugging women without their consent. During the deposition, Cosby is asked, did he give women Quaaludes without their consent or knowledge? In the 1970s, Cosby refers to one woman named Therese Sergenes, who he had an affair with back in the 1970s. Cosby does admit to obtaining the popular drug mainly for back issues. However, he did keep them around for women who requested them. Quaaludes were not a date rape drug. Even if someone tried to drug someone unknowingly with Quaaludes, you would be able to detect the taste in a drink because they were large white pills. Therese Sergenes even told People magazine back in 2014 that she knew what she was taking because Bill Cosby told her what they were. Sergenes changed her story once other Cosby accusers came forward. She was also one of the accusers who settled with Cosby's insurance, AIG, this past April. The media released selected excerpts from the deposition that was taken out of context. Ask yourself, if he admitted to a crime during the deposition, why didn't any of the attorneys for the accuser report it to authorities? Here's what was reported by the media. In a sworn deposition, Cosby answered questions from Constance's attorney, Dolores Torriani. When you got the Quaaludes, was it in your mind that you were going to use Quaaludes for young women that you wanted to have sex with? Torriani asked. Yes, Cosby replied. Did you ever give any of those young women the Quaaludes without their knowledge? Torriani asked. Cosby's attorneys objected and told him not to answer the question. Now here is Cosby's response when asked, did he ever give women Quaaludes without their knowledge or consent? Question: did you ever give any of those young women the Quaaludes without their knowledge? That's the question that you've been directed to answer. He responds, no. During the deposition, it was a testy back and forth between the attorneys for Cosby and Constand. When his attorney tells him not to answer, it's because the attorney knew the questioning was restricted to Jane Doe's. The media leaves out the next part of the testimony, where Cosby immediately takes back his yes and answers by saying that he misunderstood the question. Triani then says, "You have every right in the world to say no. You're misunderstanding me." Cosby responds, "I just did." In 2015, Cosby's former attorney, John P. Schmidt, who sat in on the deposition, released a statement. Nothing in the deposition release lends any support to, much less confirms, any such allegations of drugging and or raping. Nothing in his testimony admits to any non-consensual sexual contact with any woman whatsoever. Cosby steadfastly maintains his innocence. On November 4th, 2015, then Democrat Assistant DA Kevin Steele ran against former Montgomery County DA Bruce Castor. At the time, Republican DA Risa Furman no longer wanted to run for the seat, so Bruce Castor decided to run again. However, Bruce Castor lost by 17,000 votes. After Steele ran blistering ads against Castor's record, Steele also rode the wave of charging and convicting Bill Cosby. Some found one ad by Steele to be simply unethical for proclaiming to run for DA since Bill Cosby wasn't prosecuted by Bruce Castor in 2005 over Andrea Constand's allegations.
For District Attorney in Montgomery County, Kevin Steele, first Assistant DA with a 98% conviction rate and tough sentences for sexual predators. Or Bruce Castor, a former DA who refused to prosecute Bill Cosby. Castor said, "We don't charge people for making a mistake or doing something foolish." Many more victims came forward, and Castor admitted he could have used their testimony against Cosby, but Castor didn't even try. Bruce Castor was not looking out for the victims.
Some even called Kevin Steele's ad racist and compared it to the Willie Horton campaign ad of 1988. The Willie Horton campaign ad was produced by supporters of George H.W. Bush for his 1988 presidential campaign against Michael Dukakis. Horton, an African-American man, was convicted of murder who raped a white woman and stabbed her partner while furloughed from prison under a Massachusetts program in place when Dukakis, the Democratic nominee, was governor. On December 30th, 2015, the Commonwealth breaks the promise between Bill Cosby and former DA Bruce Castor to never prosecute. Kevin Steele, the Montgomery County District Attorney-elect, said that Mr. Cosby faces felony charges of indecent assault. He said the investigation involved a relationship between Mr. Cosby and the woman, Andrea Constand, that came from her work with the basketball team at Temple University, Mr. Cosby's alma mater. "The evidence is strong and sufficient to proceed," said Mr. Steele, now first Assistant District Attorney. "A person in that state cannot give consent," he added. In June of 2017, the first trial begins. Bill Cosby hires Brian McMonagle and Angela Agrusa to represent him during the trial. During the first trial, the prosecution called on several witnesses, including Andrea Constand to testify and her mother, Gianna Constand. During the first trial, the defense team knew how absurd or incredible the accusations were and chose not to call any defense witnesses to the stand. According to ABC News, the jury had initially voted to find Cosby not guilty of all 3 counts leveled against him. However, that vote was non-binding, and Judge Stephen T. O'Neill kept sending the jurors back to deliberate. After more than 50 hours of deliberations over 5 days, the jury was unable to reach a unanimous verdict on any of the 3 charges. Right after Judge Stephen T. O'Neill announces a hung jury, DA Kevin Steele decides to prosecute Cosby a second time. The second time around, Bill Cosby hires 3 new attorneys. The first, Tom Mesereau; the second, Kathleen Bliss; and the third, Sam Silver. The deck was stacked high against Cosby the second time around. Cosby's attorney said in a motion, the Commonwealth knows that the charges brought against William H. Cosby Jr., based on the conflicting, changing, and ultimately unbelievable allegations of Andrea Constand, are insufficient to obtain a conviction against Mr. Cosby. Thus, in the second trial, the DA and judge were desperate to get a conviction, and Judge Stephen T. O'Neill allowed 5 additional 404B witnesses to testify against Mr. Cosby. 404B witnesses in this case are uncharged, unreported, hearsay accusations from third parties, the alleged prior bad acts. The allegations must be identical. However, none of the accusations were identical to Constand's claims. Prior to this case, no court in Pennsylvania has ever admitted evidence of prior conduct extending back 20, 30, and almost 40 years as the Commonwealth allowed. Mr. Cosby's defense team tried to portray Ms. Constand as a con artist who made up the allegations to extract money from the star. Mr. Cosby paid Ms. Constand $3.38 million to settle a 2005 lawsuit she filed against him alleging assault. He didn't admit wrongdoing. You're dealing with a pathological liar. Members of the jury, Mr. Mesereau said during closing arguments. Bill Cosby got conned big time. Prosecutors called the 5 additional women to show that when Mr. Cosby assaulted Ms. Constand, he was following a pattern or common scheme. Mr. Mesereau said Mr. Cosby had acted foolishly by taking a romantic interest in Ms. Constand. He argued that his client, who had been married for more than 50 years to Camille Cosby, was no criminal. To offset the 5 additional 404B witnesses, Judge Stephen T. O'Neill allowed a star witness for the defense team. Defense witness Marguerite Jackson, an academic advisor at Temple University, said accuser Andrea Constand told her she could fabricate sexual assault allegations and get that money from a lawsuit, bolstering Cosby's efforts to show Constand made up the allegations against him to extort a big civil settlement. Ultimately, Bill Cosby was convicted on 3 counts of aggravated indecent assault on April 26, 2018. Even though the jury heard consistent examples of Constand changing her story, changing dates of the alleged assault, still continuing to meet up with Cosby after being allegedly sexually assaulted, the jury still agreed with the prosecution. It also didn't help that a new movement was making waves across the country called the Me Too movement. Cosby's conviction was being heralded as the Me Too movement translating into judicial success. Mr. Cosby continues to fight against this verdict. On August 12th of this year, he and his legal counsel officially put in an appeal and are currently awaiting an answer from the Superior Court of Pennsylvania.
It was a travesty of justice, the likes of which I've never seen in my whole career. I think celebrity was used against him. I think the times we live in were used against him. I think politics took over where justice is supposed to reign supreme. The Me Too movement is founded in something very, very desirable. I commend those principles, but the movement has gotten so powerful that judges are running scared, in my opinion.
Cosby is